What the scariest true story you know? I grew up in a funeral home. I helped out in the office. When I was about 15, we got a call from a man whose wife and infant baby had been murdered in cold blood. There were very few clues. It made headlines. Cops set up surveillance at the viewing. It was heartbreaking, as the mother was holding the baby in her arms. I was asked to take the flower cards and periodically get the husband and ask if he recognized the names. I then photocopied them and put them back. I did it because I was a kid, people knew me, and I was unobtrusive. I talked to the husband quite a bit. He seemed devastated and shaken. The cops told me they had an eyewitness to someone leaving the house the day of the murder. The witness was a 3-year-old girl. She recognized the man leaving. It was the husband's best friend. Turns out that the friend and the husband had made a pact to kill each other's families and run off with their secretaries. The little girl identified the friend, and I guess one of them cracked. They both went to jail on multiple counts, all on the testimony of a 3-year-old. I still cannot believe to this day that that man stood right beside me, multiple times, and I had no clue. I don't think I ever looked at life the same way after that. Edit, thanks for the awards, but the wholesome award? LOL. My great-aunt woke up in the middle of the night. She heard her dog making these low growls. She was single at the time and living alone in her ranch-style home. She walked out to her living room to check things out. She didn't see or hear anything out of the ordinary, so she decided to make sure her door and front windows were locked. Door was locked, first window she checked was locked. When she lifted the mini blind on the second window, it was wide open and a guy in a ski mask was standing there. She said he laughed this evil laugh and said party time, then he started to climb in. She screamed that she had a gun, her dog started barking his head off. The would-be rapist decided to bolt. My aunt did get a gun after that and learned how to use it. I can't even think about what would have happened to her if she didn't have her dog to warn her. Sad face. Good dog. I'm so glad that nothing else happened to your aunt. Smart, she is taken further safety measures, arming herself now. That could have been such a bad situation had her pup not barked. It gives me chills thinking about what could have happened. That situation made me believe in guardian angels. Her dog was a basset hound. She wasn't really thinking about getting a puppy, but friends had this litter and something about him captured her heart. He was a typical basset, he snored, drooled, had low energy lol. But he came through when it mattered. He only lived to be about 4, he had Addison's disease. He was a furry, 4-legged blessing. James Bulger. He was just 2 years old and with his mom running errands. She let go of his hand to pay the cashier, and he wandered away. 2 10-year-old boys spotted him, lured him toward them, took him by the hands and led him away. They took him to a remote location, pushing and kicking at him the whole time. Some people questioned the 2 kids with the crying toddler, but they lied, saying he was their brother, and nobody intervened further. They took him to a secluded spot and tortured him. I don't want to recount the torture details, it's just too gruesome. They left his body on some railroad tracks, hoping that being run over by a train would make it look like an accident. He was found days later, his body severed in half by a train. The boys were caught and became the youngest convicted murderers in British history. Security footage from the day they took James shows them watching children, picking out a target. And they were just kids themselves. They were released at 18. One of them is back in jail for possessing child abuse photos on his computer. The most terrifying thing about this for me is that my own son is only 2 now, and James's murderers were just children, too. It was premeditated and intentional and entirely random. Just a momentary lapse in attention and he became a target of 2 murderous children. Children. To think that children younger than my stepson are capable of such a thing, ugh. Everything about this case is just horrifying. The scariest true story I know is my own. I grew up with a very mentally ill and abusive father. The summer I was 16 and my younger brother was 13, my father shot my brother with a shotgun at almost point-blank range in our basement. Thankfully, it missed his heart by 2 inches and he is still alive today. I came home that evening to find my stepmother cleaning the blood off the tile floor like there was nothing to see. It was the most terrifying and surreal thing I've ever experienced. One would believe attempted murder would be enough to terminate custody rights, but alas, the police chalked it up to accidental and my brother and I were too frightened of our father to say otherwise. At 18 and 15, respectively, my brother and I packed up and left the state never to speak to our father again. To this day, little bits of shrapnel still surface in my brother's chest. Edit. Thank you to everyone who took time to read, comment, and upvote. This is not something I regularly share with people. I appreciate all the kindness. Copied from Wikipedia. Dangwal Rasalite, May 19, 1983 – January 10, 2000, was a Lithuanian girl who was sold as a sex slave in Sweden in late 1999. Her mother had abandoned her when she was 14 years old and left for the USA. When she was 15 to 16 years old, she was sent from Lithuania by an older man who pretended to be her boyfriend. He promised her a job as a berry picker in Sweden and gave her a fake passport. When she arrived in Sweden, a man welcomed her and locked her in an apartment in Malmö. He said she had to pay him 20,000 kronor for her passport and the transportation from Lithuania to Sweden. She soon understood she would be working as a prostitute. Rasalite was forced to work as a prostitute for 2 weeks before she escaped the apartment she was imprisoned in. On January 7, 2000, she jumped off a bridge in Malmö after escaping from the apartment and getting raped by a group of men who pretended they would help her. She died 3 days later at a hospital. Her case stirred much debate on human trafficking. I had a guy tell me a story a couple decades ago about how he was hiking in an area in South America and wandered away from other hikers in the area. The ground was wet and without warning it gave away and he got sucked into a fast-moving underground river pitch black, completely submerged, and at the mercy of the current as it buffeted him against the sides of the tunnel. After some time the current subsided and he realized he was in a larger pocket, still pitch black and submerged. He said that even as he struggled to hold his breath, he didn't panic and realized that the water had to keep moving somewhere, so he moved around until he found another tunnel that sucked him in. At one point he began to see light, so he punched upwards, broke through the ground and pulled himself out, soaking wet, gasping for air, and a bit of a distance from the other dry hikers, who were somewhat bewildered when they saw him straggling up to them. That's nope, Max. His logic and calm are great, but he could have easily gotten stuck in one of those tubes and died a nasty death. Caves are just a nope from me, dog.